I've had so much caffeine today, but somehow I got more. It's gonna be a day. Hello friends! So I don't know what dark academia is. We're getting into spooky season and I see a lot of recommendation videos for dark academia. And when I see those videos, a lot of the things that are suggested, I have some of them on my shelves and I had no idea it was dark academia. In a few instances, I have classified them in my brain as like gothic horror or maybe just a weird suspense thriller. And in other cases, I don't really know how to classify them. And so I took to Google and Goodreads and I looked at a few dark academia lists. And from those couple of lists that I looked at, I'm gonna be honest, I did not like extensively research it. I could have watched people's suggestions more closely. I didn't do that, I'll be transparent. But from the list that I did find, I looked at my own shelves and I pulled off 5 different books that technically are dark academia. And then recently I watched a few early reviews of a book that I have pre-ordered and have been anticipating, and it was called Dark Academia. And I was like, you know what? That book comes out in like 2 weeks. Why not read as many dark academia books that I have on my shelf? Obviously, I'm not starting out great because I don't exactly understand dark academia. So I'm going in with very little understanding as to whether or not I like dark academia, but I know for sure that the most recommended dark academia book is The Secret History, which is by Donna Tartt, and If We Were Villains, which I actually don't remember the author of that book, but I see those two in tandem, always recommended. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't have any interest in reading anything by Donna Tartt, but I would be more willing to give If We Were Villains a chance if I end up liking the books that I'm reading for this Dark Academia vlog. So getting to the books that I'm actually gonna be reading for this vlog, the first one I'm really excited about, and until reading this list of different books that are considered dark academia, I had no idea this is dark academia, and that's Bunny by Mona Awad. This is one of those books that everybody reads and says you're either gonna love it or hate it. That's very weird, and I'm really excited because I do love really weird books. Plus, this seems like such a polarizing read. I'm really curious where I'll fall. I then will be reading Truly Devious, which is another book I had no idea was dark academia. I should have known though because it is set at a boarding school. I'm really hoping that it gives me Stalking Jack the Ripper vibes because while a lot of people hate that series, and it did go downhill, I really liked the first 2 books in that series, so I'm kind of hoping for that vibe. I feel like we're gonna get that here, but I don't know. The next one I'm reading is the one that I'm like really questioning whether or not this is dark academia because I thought it was just gothic horror, and that is Plain Bad Heroines. So I'm not 100% sure how this is dark academia. The next book I'll be listening to on audiobook because I have a copy of the audiobook, and that is They Never Learn. And this is one I'm really interested in the realm of dark academia because it follows a professor rather than students, which I think commonly dark academia kind of follows the students, but obviously I don't know anything about dark academia. I could be wrong. And the last one I'll be reading is a book that I've pre-ordered. I'm highly anticipating it. I think it comes out in about 2 weeks, and that is Summer Sons. And this is another one that I think is like a dark academia gothic horror, and I'm wondering if like those things typically go hand in hand. I guess we'll find out. If I'm honest with you, I'm really hoping this gives me Raven Boys vibes, because technically Raven Boys is considered dark academia, I guess. I don't know. What is dark academia? Let's find out together. Me and my clip. Okay, so I don't know how far I am. I think I'm a little further than this, but it's like, damn, Olive, get it. She's using her scratching pose right now. This says 73 pages, but I think I'm like 90 pages in because I have been listening to the audiobook while I was washing dishes. I said that really weird. Anyway, yeah, I think I'm like 90 pages in. It's weird. This is fucking weird, but despite it being really weird, I'm liking it. The funny thing is though, I was at the part, this is not a spoiler by any means because you already know that the main character Samantha starts to like hang out with the bunnies. So I was at a part where she's hanging out with the bunnies and she's kind of reflecting on their, not their friendship, but like they're in classes together or in a class together in college, and like they critique each other's stories because it's like a college of the arts and they're all writing. And so Samantha's reflecting on her interactions with some of the bunnies, and like the way that she talks about it reminds me of that episode of Parks and Rec where Ben is doing like a congressional campaign and one of the congressmen comes into the office to visit them and he's just like a robot and he keeps asking people how the weather is, and then when he's sitting in his office he's just sitting off staring into space, and somebody was like, maybe there's a TV in there, and then they look and it's just a wall. I'm gonna insert that clip because that's what I feel about the bunnies when Samantha's describing their past interactions. Anyway, I'm at a really weird part right now and I don't know what the fuck's happening. I don't know what's happening half the time, but I'm feeling something. I'm feeling something about it. I'm feeling some type of way about it. There's like a slight breeze today and it's making me feel those fall vibes, and I'm really excited even though it's like 100 degrees today. I'm looking past that because there are dead leaves falling off trees. They're probably just burned to a crisp because it's so fucking hot. Hey, so what the fuck did I just read? What was this? What was this? I couldn't even explain this book to you if I tried. And it's funny because my reaction is probably making you think that I didn't like this, but I actually really liked it. I think I would give it like a 4 stars. It's like one of those books that I keep thinking about it, especially because in theory, this shouldn't have worked as well as it did, because it's a book where you don't know what's happening. Like, there is so much up for interpretation with this book. And like, there's a lot of open-endedness and open plots and confusing aspects that really are up for interpretation. And like, I think the fact that you can interpret certain things can make this book either good or bad, and it also depends on how much you like open-endedness and open plots and the fact that things may not be real. But somehow this all worked really well for me because it was just the right level of weird, but also the right level of open-endedness where I am having fun continuing to think about this book and think about what really happened and like some of the things that are revealed to you by the end, especially considering the flashbacks in this book that start to give you some information that maybe if you're not really paying attention to them or taking the flashbacks seriously, that you may not understand certain things about this book and like where it goes. I don't know. I feel like I'm gonna have to think about this book for a long time, but I don't think I'll ever have any good explanation about this book. I can't even explain it to you. I think the thing that I said in the beginning is that it's about a girl named Samantha, and she goes to this school and there's this group of girls called the Bunnies, but the Bunnies have like this weird obsession with one another and like they're very clingy and lovey and they're always together. And Samantha gets invited to this annual thing that the Bunnies have called the Smut Salon, and she's apprehensive about going because she kind of hates the Bunnies on one hand, but on the other hand, she has like a sick fascination with them and what their deal is. And she kind of just gets sucked into a friendship with the Bunnies. You don't know what's real, you don't know what's fake, you don't know where the story is gonna go. And when it goes to a place, you're like, what? But at the same time, because of certain threads in this story, it actually makes sense in my brain when I'm thinking about it. Like when I'm trying to come to a conclusion about what I just read. Parts of this actually make way more sense than I think it should. This book is so hard to explain. I'm giving it 4 stars. I really liked it. I do not think this is for everybody. I don't know who I would suggest it to. If you like really weird books that are open-ended and have open-ended plots, and you like, it's a book that you can interpret in so many different ways, it's a ride. It's a wild, wild ride. And if you like culty stuff, this would probably fit. I wouldn't say it's like a strict cult in the classic sense of a cult, like the way we think about cults, but like, it's a cult. I don't know how much reading I'm gonna get done today, but I did get a package. If you saw my book haul, you know that thrift books is very dangerous for me. Especially because I found out recently that I have Apple Cash. Don't know where that came from, but I have it, and so I've been using it on thrift books. Oh, it has library binding on it. Anyway, this is, I think it's Nama, and this is supposed to be a retelling of Noah's Ark, but from the perspective of his unnamed wife. So her name in this book is Nama, and I don't know, I've heard amazing things about it. I got the recommendation from Sage, What's New. I get like every new recommendation from Sage these days. So I'll link their channel down below, and if I specifically remember what video I watched where they were talking about this, I'll link it down below. Hi, good morning. It's really gloomy today, and I'm so excited because I think it's gonna stay gloomy all day. Anyway, I ended up starting They Never Learn last night, and I feel like Lainey Fargo one day woke up and said, women's rights, and wrote this book because it is literally about killing men. She's killing men. So basically, this story is about 2 women. One is a college student, her name is Claire, and then you have Scarlett, and she is an English professor, and she's also trying to get like this fellowship, but another professor at her college, who happens to be a man when this fellowship is supposed to be the women's fellowship, is vying for that fellowship as well. Also, trigger warnings when I'm describing this, because there is discussions about sexual assault and things like that. So if you want to skip, I'll probably have a timestamp down below. But the book opens with Scarlett, the professor, poisoning a college student because he was known to be one of many who raped a girl. And you find out that Scarlett has been targeting men who do bad things, specifically bad things towards women, and she kills them, but she makes it look like suicides. She's been doing this for a while. And then you have Carly's perspective, which now that I'm saying her name out loud, I actually don't, or is her name Claire? I don't remember. But you have her, she's a college student, I'm assuming on the same campus as Scarlett. I'm still like only a quarter of the way in, so you don't really know how their stories intertwine. I have an assumption about how their stories are gonna intertwine, but she witnesses a situation where she feels like it's kind of a helpless situation because nobody is willing to help her or bring consequences to this person for the situation. I'm keeping this very vague, but I don't know. I'm really liking it. I started it this morning and I'm addicted. I can see myself reading it in one day. I'm obsessed with this concept, even though I can see that there are going to be certain things that I think are going to get annoying over time, but I'm really excited to see where this goes because I loved Dexter, And if you don't know, Dexter is a television show on HBO. He is a serial killer, but he only targets people who do bad things. I'm actually really nervous for the new television show. I think it's only one season. I think it's only like just a one-off season, almost like the Gilmore Girls special season. I'm really nervous about it because the ending of Dexter, like the last 2 seasons, really did a Game of Thrones on me. So I finished They Never Learn, and I think I'm gonna give it a 4 stars, which is just as surprising to you as it is to me. I don't think it's really surprising because the last couple of updates that I did for that book, I was really enjoying it, and I was hoping that the storyline was going to go a specific way, and it did. I did figure out one of the twists, but I don't think it was meant for it to be super hard to figure out because the foreshadowing was definitely there. That being said, I can't say too much about They Never Learn because it is a mystery / thriller-y book, and there are plot twists that I don't want to give away for you. I told you the premise already, which was just that Scarlet is killing different men that do fucked up shit. And then you have Carly, who is a college student, and at first their storylines seem very separate. They almost seem like 2 distinct stories, which may throw you off in the beginning, but it makes sense in the end, like how they come together. Personally, I really liked that aspect of the story. It was one of my favorite parts of the story. It did have a very satisfying ending. I'm not sure how people will feel about the ending so far based off ratings, based off other people's reviews that like I watch their videos or I trust their reviews as well. A lot of people did like the ending, so that's good because I really thought it was a strong ending, and it was, I don't want to say it's unexpected by any means. I think it's the ending that it deserves. But this book just makes you question your morals. I was questioning my morals the entire time I was reading it because why was I rooting for these men to die? Like, killing is bad. Okay, we can all agree. But then they bring in this element of like, well, but they're rapists or murderers or they're pedophiles, whatever. It's like there's always something there. And you're kind of like, But no, it's not right. No matter which way you slice it and dice it. It's not correct. But your morals are constantly in question. I'll just tell you that much. Anyway, I had a lot of fun with this and I do highly recommend it, but there are a ton of trigger warnings, obviously, because she's murdering people. There's murder in here. It's pretty graphic. And you're also, there is some sexual assault that happens on page and descriptions of sexual assault in the aftermath of it happening to somebody. So I would keep that in mind. There's a lot of, I don't know what you would call it, but like academic professors taking advantage of younger women, but it's a revenge plot story. So if you tend to enjoy those, it is also sapphic, which just really warms my heart. And I don't know, I really enjoyed it. I liked the audiobook a lot. I do recommend the audiobook if you like to read via audiobook. But now, since it's only like noon, I'm gonna pick up Truly Devious. And I looked at the audiobook and it seems really short. So I could probably finish that today as well because I have a bunch of organizing that I need to do. So I could probably read most of it, if not all of it today. So I'm cleaning up my shelves right now and I'm listening to the audiobook for Truly Devious. You already knew I was gonna start this. So I've been listening to the audiobook for this while I fixed this mess. It's a disaster. I don't really want to talk about it, but I'm confused. I'm confused to say the least. I don't understand the hype about this book. I am like a quarter of the way in. They get to go to this school for free because they're smart. First off, that's the first thing. I'm very confused by the fact that they're being rewarded for being smart by getting to go to the school for free. That just seems very unrealistic to me because this is set in the US. Let's talk about that. Secondly, there was something I was forgetting about this book. There was something that I knew about the book that I just kept forgetting and I couldn't I couldn't tell you, but I had it on my shelf. It technically falls under Dark Academia, so I was like, why not? Let's add it in. This apparently ends on a cliffhanger. I don't know if the whole series is supposed to be about our main character solving this mystery that happened decades ago. So that's what's happening in here, by the way. There's a decades old, I don't know if it's a murder, but so far what they're talking about is the kidnapping of the owner of this school decades ago. His daughter was kidnapped. The kidnapper asked for money. And you're kind of going back and forth between that situation happening and the present time. So I'm not at a point where I even know like if they gave money, if they actually killed her, if they were just holding her for ransom and they were going to give her back if he gave them the money. I don't know. So yeah, I forgot that this ends on a cliffhanger. So I mean, I'm not loving it right now as it is. I can barely remember the characters. I know Ellie is the main character. I think she has a friend named Janelle. It's not so much that the characters are unrealistic. Like, I feel like their emotions and stuff are realistic. I just can't remember half of what I'm reading. I don't know. I just wanted to update because I'm not loving it. I'm not hating it. I think that the actual perspectives of in the past are really interesting because I like that vibe of the 1920s. I think it is the 1920s when the kidnapping happens. I think that part's really interesting. I like going back in that time, but I'm having trouble with like the present timeline, I guess. On the other hand, like this is YA. This is not targeted towards me. So me judging it harshly is unfair. So I'm not saying that this is a bad book. I just feel bad for not really liking it and not caring that much about the characters. More specifically, I just forget who is who. And every time somebody is mentioned, I'm like, have we met this person? But obviously this isn't even meant for me. This wasn't written for me in mind. So like, I'm trying not to be too harsh about it, but I'm not having the best time. But I'm not hating it. Like my interest is piqued, especially with the perspectives in the past. So we'll see. I'm not looking forward to the fact that this ends on a cliffhanger, I guess is my point. That's the whole point of this update. Okay, I will admit that I'm liking the plot a little bit more than I was before. I don't know if I would move on with the rest of these, but I'm definitely enjoying this like second half more than the first half because someone died. That sounds terrible. The other reason I don't think I would move on with this is because I'm getting all the characters mixed up. Even the main character. I don't even know what I was calling half these characters before, but I definitely wasn't calling them the right thing. Even our main character, Stevie, I think I was calling her Ellie or something like that at one point. I don't know. I haven't watched back the footage when I was first talking about the book, so I have no idea if I was calling her the wrong name. But it's funny that I can't even get her name right because her name is Stephanie. They call her Stevie, but her name is Stephanie. And I think I was calling her Ellie. But you know what? I know who Janelle is, and that's what matters. I need to shut my window because I live on the loudest street ever. Hello, here's the thing. I'm a clown because while this was a solid 3 stars, I say solid, it's like on the lower end of 3 stars for me. I want to read the next one because it ended on a cliffhanger. But not only did it end on a cliffhanger, it ended on a double cliffhanger because there is a murder that happens in here like halfway through the book. Maybe less than halfway, I don't really know. And then there's another mystery that's about the owner of the school's daughter, wife, and then another student who all went missing and were supposedly kidnapped. And you don't have answers about either of them. Like, once you start to get answers about the murder that ends up taking place in this book, you are then left at the very end with even more questions than you had in the beginning. And I don't trust that the second book is going to give me any answers because there's 4 books in the series, and I can't imagine if this book doesn't wrap up, the other ones aren't going to wrap up either. And I'm feeling very unsatisfied, but I want to read the second one now. I don't really know how to talk about this book just because of spoilers. And I know that I like to go into anything that's like mystery, thriller-y, murder-y, kind of not knowing that much about the plot. So I'll talk about like things that I liked and then like things that I didn't like. You know, a review. Anyway, I like our main character, Stevie, aka Stephanie. She's a pretty cool character. I really like how much she likes Sherlock Holmes, and I really like the Sherlock Holmes references in here. There are some Agatha Christie references. Those references are kind of meaningless to me because I've never read an Agatha Christie. I don't have any like attachment to it, but I love Sherlock Holmes. I think I was under the impression, and I'm not sure where I got this impression other than like, partly it's true, this does take place in like the 1920s, but that's not the focal point of the story. The story takes place in modern time. I don't know if it actually says the year that it is, but they have technology. It's modern. People have tattoos, colored hair. So I'm assuming that it's more our time. So for me, I was kind of looking for something that had more of that vibe of like Sherlock Holmes, and you do kind of get that in here, but it's more modern. So I think I went in with the wrong expectations because I somehow thought that this all took place in the past. I also liked the second half of this book a lot more than the first half of this book, and to me, like, sure, these characters are written in a way that's like they're overly witty. They're almost like John Green characters where it doesn't feel super realistic. But I'm not saying that there aren't teenagers that act like this, especially teenagers who are gifted and have been told they're gifted and they got into the school for free. I mean, one of them is an actor, so it's not necessarily that I thought the characters were unrealistic or anything like that. It was just, I didn't really like any of the characters except for our main character, and her love interest is the worst. I don't get that relationship at all, and I'm curious if it'll even develop into anything based off how the ending happened. But anyway, I don't know. It's not so much that I thought anything was unrealistic about it in terms of characters and how they interacted with each other. I just got them all mixed up. I didn't really enjoy any of the characters except for our main character. And, oh, well, no, she has a friend who, again, I can't remember anybody's names. That's another problem I was having. But she does have a friend. It's not Janelle. That's the one name I remember. I didn't hate Janelle, but I didn't feel anything towards her. It's her male friend where they have like this really, I felt like it was a really special relationship where they definitely understood each other. And I think at one point he even said like, we speak in awkward nerd or something like that. And I liked their friendship. It was very wholesome and cute. That's like the only relationship slash friendship slash character dynamics that I even remember or liked that much. I think the mystery in the past, I didn't care about as much as I thought I was going to, but I cared, or I was invested a lot more in the murder that takes place later in the book. And to be honest, I actually have really mixed feelings about the fact that while this is a series, there's no conclusion to this book. This literally feels like it ended in the middle of a book. Like you got a chunky mystery book and this is just the first half of it. And I'm sure that's supposed to feel that way because it is a series. And so I'm nervous that if I go into the second book, I'm still not going to get enough answers about the mystery that was presented in here. So I don't know. I don't like that. I don't like that this doesn't feel complete. I really wish we would have gotten answers about the murder that happens halfway through and that this book would have strung the kidnapping mystery throughout the entire series, because I think that would have been more satisfying to spend more time on the kidnapping case, because that to me, I felt like that would be unrealistic if our main character like solved it in her first year at this school, and like not really having a lot of clues, and even throughout the book she hadn't even found that many clues regarding the mystery. I don't know, I have to think on it. At the very least, I'll read the second book at some point in time and see how I feel about it. But today is an exciting day because Summer Sons comes out and I'm so excited. I've been really anticipating this book. I bought myself a huge thing of pumpkin syrup. You know, I picked up Summer Sons yesterday. Like literally, I picked it up from the bookstore yesterday. I'm a little over 100 pages into this. This gives me very Ronan Lynch vibes from the Raven Boys. If you know, you know. It gives me very Ronan and Adam vibes. But the thing is, I understand this plot because our main character Andrew has lost his best friend Eddie, and they were supposed to be in this graduate program together because it's what Eddie wanted to do. And you start to realize that like Eddie has a hold on Andrew in a really weird way. I don't know. I'm not like connecting with this because I don't understand. Am I supposed to like these characters? I don't know. I think maybe that's what's keeping me from connecting to the story a little bit, is that like I like Andrew, but I don't like any of the side characters so far. And I kind of like his roommate. His roommate's name is Riley. I kind of like him. I hate his cousin. His cousin reminds, if you've read The Raven Boys, Kavinsky reminds me of Riley's cousin, who I didn't like Kavinsky in The Raven Boys, so it's funny that in this I don't like. I think his name is, what is his name? I don't know. So far I'm not fully connecting with the story. I'm not like enjoying it as much as I thought I would because this was a pretty highly anticipated book for me. I'm very curious about what starts to get uncovered about Eddie's death. Like I'm really waiting for the moment when we kind of dive deep into that. And I know that our main character is not like a detective, and he doesn't claim to be, like he's not taking on that type of identity. He's just genuinely in a state of grief and very upset and in disbelief that his friend would have ever taken his own life. So he's trying to figure it out, but obviously like he's kind of making stupid decisions along the way because of his grief and like anger about the whole situation. He also is kind of angry about his relationship with Eddie in the first place because I think he's starting to like recognize some things about their relationship that maybe he was more willing to ignore in the past. I don't know. I hope that I connect more to it because I've seen a few of my friends really, really love this book. But I'm 120 pages in and it's 369 pages. So I don't know if that's a good sign.
Come home. I'll be waiting. Received 8/6, 3:32 a.m. The message sat unanswered. Andrew tapped from Eddie's hanging text thread to the brief obituary that had run in the local paper. Edward Lee Fulton, recent graduate of Ohio State University, is survived by adoptive parents Lou and Jean Blur and sibling Andrew Blur, as well as close friends and colleagues. Memorial services will be held at Streckler Funeral Parlor on Tuesday, August 10th at 11 a.m. Andrew dropped his skull against the headrest of the driver's seat, free arm dangling out the open window. The impound office waited across a potholed blacktop parking lot, baked under dog day sun to a shimmer. Sans air conditioning, the interior of the Supra grew hot and hotter as he flipped through nothing on his phone.
I finished Summer Sons in like a day. I liked this. I know in the beginning, I think when I was talking about it, I was having a lot of trouble connecting with the characters. I wasn't really liking the character. Halfway through this book, there is a turning point, and that changed my enjoyment of this book. I don't really know exactly how to explain what that turning point was because it wasn't like a big plot reveal. I think it was just like I was enjoying more of this mystery about Eddie. But if you go into this thinking that this is primarily about the mystery of Eddie and like the mystery of this curse that's on his family and that there's going to be a lot of ghosts in here, that's not true. It's really just about our main character, Andrew, going through a grieving process, and there happens to be like ghost stuff, like paranormal, ghosty things, but this book mainly reads like a really angsty Gothic book. And I say a Gothic book because this is considered Gothic horror, and I was kind of looking up what defines a Gothic horror, and really it's like this tension throughout the entire book. It's not that there's a lot happening in the book or a lot of like scary, twisty, turny things. It's just a lot of tension and like atmosphere. Summer Sons definitely has that like atmosphere, that tension, because you don't know really what's lingering underneath the surface of this story, but it's not like super intense the whole way through where you're on the edge of your seat the whole time. I can actually picture people saying that they get bored by this book because in the very beginning, while I was enjoying the setup for the most part, I wasn't really liking the characters and I wasn't enjoying the tone of this book at first, so I wasn't connected, and I was just kind of like, I could DNF this right now. And then there was a turning point. What's interesting is I'm not comparing the two books because they're vastly different time periods, dealing with different things, but they're both Gothic horror, and that's Mexican Gothic. I feel like if you liked the tone of Mexican Gothic, where it was just like this build up, there isn't a lot happening, but then that tension is released at the last like 5% of this book, then you'll probably like the tone and the tension in here if you liked that tone and tension in Mexican Gothic. I ended up loving the ending of this a lot, like what everything was building up to and the major reveal that you get and like the closure that you get on everything in the story. I'm trying not to give anything away. The one thing I absolutely loved about this book was the exploration of sexuality, and like you had a character who was really coming to terms with their sexuality and the fact that like there was a lot of suppression of their identity for many years that they didn't really realize, and exploring their first queer relationship. So I loved that the most in this book, which is what makes me want to give this a 4 stars. I genuinely think it's a 3 stars for me just because of how much I did not connect with the beginning of this book, to the point where I was like, maybe I'll DNF this, which was very disappointing because I was highly anticipating this. But the second half of the book was almost like a 5 stars for me, if not like a 4.5 stars. So it's probably a 3.5. I'll probably round it up to a 4 stars because my favorite parts of this were mostly in the second half of the book, and it was a lot of the exploration of sexuality, and like you got a little more explanation about certain things happening in here, and obviously the reveal happens. Again, I'm being really vague, so I don't know. I have mixed feelings. I kind of want to think on it a little bit more, but I think right now I'm settling on a 3.5 stars, which I'll round up to a 4 stars on Goodreads. But I am glad that I read it, and it does actually have a heavy emphasis on the master or PhD program, like the dissertation that he's kind of writing in here. There's a lot of exploration on school and writing and academics. It's hard to talk about any of these books in general. I think I said this in the beginning, but now I'm coming to realize even more after reading most of these books that if this is generally what dark academia is, which I'm learning that for the most part, there are obviously academics involved, or it takes place in an academic setting, and there's some sort of mystery, like some dark mystery happening throughout the entire book, whether that's a murder or whatever. And so it's almost impossible to talk about these books in detail without spoiling anything, because a lot of the things that I want to talk about I feel like give away too much of these books. So I'm sorry if my reviews are kind of lacking, but I just don't want to spoil anybody. Okay, so I'm like 200 pages into Plain Bad Heroines, and I'm really enjoying it, by the way, but I'm starting to... I don't think this is what Dark Academia is supposed to be. Like, I think it's supposed to be set at the school, because there is a school setting. There's a death that happens at an all-girls school, but that's like not the focus. It's actually about this movie that's being made about the situation that happened at the school. And we do go back and forth between timelines. So like the deaths that happened at the school happened in like the 1900s, and then this movie is being made in 2000 something. And so technically you get stuff at this boarding school, but it's not strictly set at the boarding school. So I'm still gonna finish it because I'm enjoying it, but I don't know that this is actually Dark Academia. I mean, it's a horror and it has like a murder and it has like a mystery element as to what happened surrounding those deaths. Even though it seems pretty clear cut what happened, it's not exactly. So like it has those elements that the other Dark Academia books that I've been reading so far have, but the fact that it's like set in present time about actors and a writer making this movie, I don't know.
Close your eyes, get out of your skin. Only this matters, let it in. If I could, I would be right here with you. In this world of ticking clocks, I hope.
Hello, happy October. It's October 1st. It's already been spooky season for me since like August, but it's officially spooky season for everybody else. Everyone else is catching up. And on this very day, I finished Plain Bad Heroines, which I would describe as a gothic horror, but also it has Dark Academia elements in it. I don't know. I did mention this yesterday that I wasn't convinced that this would fall into the category of Dark Academia, but I Googled again and I looked up some stuff on YouTube and on Goodreads, and I found it on the same lists, obviously, but I also saw a lot of people recommending this as a Dark Academia book. So therefore, this just confirms that no matter the fact that I read 5 Dark Academia books, I still don't understand what Dark Academia is. Which is kind of a lie. I've learned a lot, which we'll get there, but first I want to talk about Plain Bad Heroines because this was really unexpected for me. Mainly because I think that if you are somebody who likes the Starless Sea, like you loved the Starless Sea, specifically the structure of the Starless Sea and the fact that there's like stories within stories, you're gonna love this book, probably, most likely. It's just funny to me because I didn't like the Starless Sea and I really enjoyed this. I'm not sure what my rating is yet, but I did actually really like this and I see myself thinking about it for a while. To give you a quick synopsis of this without giving too much away about the story, there are 2 timelines in here, definitive timelines, but there are multiple stories happening and therefore you could say there's like 3 or 4 timelines. So in the early 1900s, there is an all-girls boarding school called Brocant's School for Girls, and at this school there is a group of girls who are really obsessed with this author named Mary MacLane. I actually did a little bit of research on this. Mary MacLane is a real author and she spent most of her writing career we were talking about being a woman who is in love with women and basically being queer. And so a lot of people in that time in real life thought she was the devil. So this plays into that story. And this group of girls are obsessed with Mary McLean because they are also queer. As a matter of fact, everybody in this book, for the most part, there are like a few characters who it's unknown how they identify, but everyone in this book is queer. But at this school, 3 of the girls end up dying under mysterious circumstances, and it brings to question whether or not this book that they're all obsessed with by Mary McLean is actually cursed. So then you fast forward to like a present timeline, which is like, I'm assuming it's our timeline. I don't think it's ever said exactly if it's like 2020, but it's definitely in a current time period, and you're following 3 different women. You're following Harper, Audrey, and Merritt. And Merritt actually wrote a book based off of the situation that happened at the boarding school. She's done a lot of research regarding those mysterious deaths and the supposed curse on the Brooke Hunt School for Girls. She wrote a book about it, and this book is getting adapted into a movie. And that's where Audrey and Harper come in. They are the 2 leading actresses that are playing the 2 girls that were in love and ended up dying. And so those are the definitive timelines that you're following, but you get a lot of excerpts from Mary McLean's book, but you're also kind of following a timeline that happens a little bit after the girls die, and you're following 2 women who are in a relationship and the weird things that keep happening after this situation happened. I would say that this definitely falls under gothic horror, and I see why people kind of recommend it as a dark academia because there is a lot of stuff happening at this boarding school in one timeline. But in the second timeline, which I think you spend the most time in, it's just on sets, and they eventually do end up at the boarding school to film, but it happens in the last like quarter of the book. That being said, as I've come to understand gothic horror a little bit more, I've read like 3 or 4 gothic horror books, and the one thing I've noticed in all of them is that all the drama happens in the last like 10% of the book. I think I was actually talking about this with Summer Sons, because Summer Sons is also considered dark academia but gothic horror. It has like gothic horror tones to it. I think it leans more on the gothic horror side. I think this leans more on the gothic horror side. And that's like the number one thing about this book. There is such an underlying tone of sinisterness and like creepiness that isn't exactly resolved completely. This kind of ends on an open ending, not fully. There are answers, but it does kind of end in an open way that could be bothersome for some. You know, I say that could be bothersome for some, but I think this whole book could be bothersome for some people, because the other thing about the narration is that this whole story is told by a narrator that you don't know who the narrator is. I have some theories about who I think this narrator is, but they're narrating the whole of the story, and they actually talk to you as the reader. So a lot of it is like, dear reader, listen to me, blah, 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 blah. And they'll go into a story about whatever they're talking about at the time. And it's always breaking that fourth wall. So it reminds me of the storytelling of a series of unfortunate events, but you don't know who the narrator is at all. I liked the narrator though. I really liked the way the story was told. I really liked the insight that the narrator had. I liked the excerpts from the stories of Mary McLean. I was really involved in the story in the past timeline in the 1900s at the school. That was my favorite part of this book, was that timeline, because it was the more creepy of the timelines. Like the more modern timeline had creepy undertones to it, but I felt like it wasn't as like dark and eerie as the 1900s timeline. And I really loved those characters and just the weird things that were happening. And then in the modern timeline, there's a lot of weird things happening, but in some ways you almost could feel like you could excuse what was happening for various reasons that I won't get into because of spoilers, but you could almost excuse it so the stakes of it didn't feel that high to me. But I don't know. I just really enjoyed this, and it was kind of unexpected because when I did first try to read this many months ago, like when it came out, I wasn't really in love with the storytelling, like the fact that the narrator was talking to us. And I just think I wasn't in the right mindset for it. I wasn't in the mood for it. But for whatever reason, it just worked for me this time, and I really loved the narration style. And I listened to this on audiobook. I don't know if I said that. But I think that next time, this is a book that I feel like if anything I've ever read is rereadable, this is the book for that, because there's so many characters and like different things happening. I know I missed a lot. I've missed so much about this book. But I did want to show you, there's like some really cool illustrations. So there's really cool illustrations that actually go along with what's happening in the story. And I really enjoyed those. I looked through them after I read the book because I didn't want to spoil myself for anything. But I did want to say that there is a lot of insect imagery in here. So I would be wary of that if you are somebody who hates bugs and has like a fear of bugs. Wasps specifically are a big part of the story, and they're used in really grotesque ways. So I would keep that in mind. Obviously it's a horror, so there is a lot of death. I don't know. I really loved it. I still don't know what to rate it. And it's one of the books that I'll definitely be rereading in the future because I know that I missed so much of it. I do highly recommend the audiobook. The narrator is great, but I also would say maybe read it physically the first time because I don't know if I did myself a disservice by listening to it. But with that, I have read the 5 Dark Academia books that I had on my shelves currently. Although funny enough, by the time I'm finishing filming this vlog, I have acquired 2 more. So to recap, I read Bunny by Mona Awad, and this one, I think I gave it 4 or 5 stars. It's actually been a while since I've read this one, but I do think about it all the time. I still could not describe it to you. Just like at the beginning of this vlog, I can't describe or put into words what this book even was and what it did to my brain, but I had a really great time. It was a wild ride, and this is another book that I would definitely want to reread because I feel like I was confused for 90% of it, but I was just here for it. And I think if I reread it, it would be even better, maybe, or I would hate it. I don't really know. Then I read They Never Learn, which I really enjoyed. This one to me was the most different out of all of the Dark Academia books that I read in this vlog. If anything, to me, that one felt more like a thriller, like a domestic thriller or a psychological thriller, even though you already knew what was happening because you are in the mind of the person who is a killer. But it was the most different, especially because it was also from a teacher's perspective instead of a student's perspective, which I think is most common in Dark Academia. At least even in this vlog, the majority of what I read was definitely from a student's perspective, or dealing with students. Also, the mysteries that are involved with most of these stories, you don't know the information of what happened, but in this one you do. But I really liked it. I did settle on giving this a 4 stars. I really enjoyed it, but I don't think I would ever reread this book. Not because I already know what's happening. Like, you basically know what's gonna happen the whole time. But just because it wasn't that kind of book for me. It wasn't a book that I would want to keep on my shelf, even though I just have the audiobook. But I really enjoyed it, and I think that if you like psychological thrillers especially, you'll probably have a lot of fun with this one. Then I read Truly Devious, which is probably my least favorite of all of the books that I read, but I still gave it 3 stars just because the second half was a lot better than the first half and I connected with it a bit more. I still have no idea if I'll read the second one, even though I desperately want to know what happens, even though I'm pretty sure I'll be left on another cliffhanger. But I am glad that I finally got to it. Again, this one really fell under the aspect of it being students dealing with like a mystery / a murder, and they are attending the school that this happens at. And it does feel more like a boarding school because they're living in this area together. But what's interesting about this one is I think I tend to think of Dark Academia as like college, when this one takes place in high school. I then read Summer Sons, which is a new release. It just came out on Tuesday, and I'm settling on a 3.5 stars for this. I really ended up enjoying this more than I was in the beginning. It was another case of I felt like the second half was a lot better than the first half, and I started to connect more with the characters in the second half of this book. This one to me leans more on the gothic horror side than I think Dark Academia. But again, I really don't think I learned anything about what Dark Academia is by reading these books. And then lastly, obviously, I've read Plain Bad Heroines. You already know how I feel about this one. If I had to choose a favorite out of all of these, I think it would be a tie between Bunny and Plain Bad Heroines. And it's probably gonna be Plain Bad Heroines just because this was so unexpectedly complex and interesting and has so much to think about and dissect. And with Bunny, it was just a wild ride. It was really fun and I liked it, but it's not the same. I still think this leans more on the gothic horror side than on Dark Academia, but that brings me to what did I learn from this? I don't know. I learned that Dark Academia, as it is well known, is very white, and it's rich. It's a lot of white people, it's a lot of rich people, and oftentimes it's in private schools or like master's or PhD programs. I definitely think that in every dark horror there is some sort of mystery shrouding the situation, and a lot of times, as we learned, murder is involved. A lot of death happens. But I also think that Dark Academia almost feels cultish, and I wonder if that's speaking to the fact that academics feel like a cult at times. And so I felt like a lot of these seem a little cult-like. But I'm still unclear about what Dark Academia really is. My knowledge just sort of was solidified in the fact that like schools are obviously involved, academia, that's clear, and it's dark, so like weird stuff is happening, and it usually leans on the horror-y side. In the majority of these where they did take place in a school setting where there is a student involved, which are these three, there's not much academics happening. I'll tell you that much. There's not much learning going on here. To be fair, Summer Sons actually spends a better part of this book discussing his dissertation or master's thesis. I don't remember what exactly he was trying to do with that. It does spend a good portion of it talking about all of that, but that's because it plays into a bigger plot line in here. So again, academics don't really play a big role. And then obviously like this book, Plain Bad Heroines and They Never Learn, like this does not deal with academics at all. Like they are at a school setting, some of it, but like there's no academia happening. It just happens to be at a school and they read a book. Again, had nothing to do with their education. And then again, and They Never Learn, she is an adult, she's a teacher, she's vying for a, what's it called? Like a fellowship. She wants a fellowship that will advance her career a bit, that's in London, and so she's vying for that, and like there is some shit going on behind the scenes between her and another colleague that are kind of vying for the same position. And I guess that's something that I expected a little bit more of from Dark Academia, was scheming among students to like ruin each other's academic careers, because I feel like that would be a thing for rich white people at a school to do. Wasn't exactly the case, but it kind of happens here and there in the ones that are more academic focused or actually in an academic setting. But yeah, all in all, I learned very little, except that they're very hit or miss for me, but I didn't hate anything that I read. I'm more inclined now to maybe pick up If We Were Villains, and I think there's one other one that's a Dark Academia that like everybody recommends that I'm not thinking of right now that I would be a little more inclined to pick up. Anyway, thanks for coming along this ride with me. And down below, let me know some of your favorite Dark Academia books and maybe some that you think I would like. And I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.